Welcome back. Let's take you to news on the go. City Power, as well as the Electricity Minister, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, are accompanied by the Mayor of Johannesburg, and they're currently giving a briefing in Johannesburg. This is aimed at providing an update on the finalisation of the Sanedi report regarding the payment dispute between Eskom and City Power. That is now underway. Let's listen in.
We had initiated in November of last year to ensure that we bring to bear the power of intergovernmental relations and to ensure that service delivery continues uninterrupted. I also want to take the opportunity to thank City Power, of course the City of Johannesburg led by the City Manager, Mr. Makola, the CEO of City Power, Chifularo Mashaba, and of course led by the board. The chair of the board is also part of this conversation, Makosini Koroli. I'm making this point, and also our colleagues from Eskom, led here by Mr. Monde Bala, who is the head of distribution at Eskom, because a particularly taxing exercise, it required cool heads, it requires a degree of maturity for us to be able to settle, if you like, disputes that go as far back as about 10 years ago. And the quantum of the monies that were involved runs into tens of millions of rands. And if they were not to be amicably resolved, I think they were, over a period of time, going to endanger the financial sustainability of City Power, and also over a period the sustainability of Eskom. Of course, we know from an Eskom point of view that they are dealing with a number of municipalities across the country, so the aggregate was going to be particularly devastating on Eskom. And also just to thank Sanedi for having accepted the assignment that we had given to them, myself and Executive Mayor Dada Morero. Remember when we were here in November, we decided that we needed a technically competent party, but also a neutral party that can help us to resolve the dispute between Eskom and Power. I must say that Sanedi has been able to discharge and prosecute that responsibility. Very much to the leadership of Sanedi. The chair of the board is here, and also the CEO, and the technical lead is also part of these discussions. I must mention from the onset that we are going to make the report of Sanedi public. We had committed, myself and the executive mayor, that we're going to satisfy our constitutional responsibilities of ensuring that we are able to surface all the facts, we are able to share all the information so that those who would want to familiarize themselves with some of the technical aspects of what has been found here are able to do so, and we are able to take learnings from the Sanedi report. We had, when we started the process in November, a bit stated a more optimistic timeline. I had made the point that in our own calculations, the exercise should not be more than 3 weeks. Of course, now we are several months later. So why is it that we are several months later? So first is that the scope of the Sanedi report, rather exercise or investigation, was a bit narrow, just focused on the issues that were before us. And those were issues of billing and metering. That exercise was done, and in the course of that, I think the parties felt that we needed to mine more raw data to ensure that the reconciliations are proper, and for us to mine that raw data required that we go back into time, and of course we can imagine the volume of the raw data, and us, the team, being able to go line by line. Myself and the executive mayor accepted the request from Sanedi and both parties, namely Eskom and City Power, for an extension of the time that we had communicated publicly. Myself and the Executive Mayor are of the opinion that we should invest in the integrity of this process, give it time, because there are learnings, things that should be learned and unlearned from this experience. So we should invest a lot of time in ensuring that we are able to understand the nature of the problem, we are able to diagnose it properly, and the prognosis must also be accurate. And Sanedi did generate a report in that regard, and that's the report that I said we will make public. But the teams, Eskom and City Power, were of the opinion that they needed to go beyond the scope of the Sanedi mandate, because there were other issues that were not necessarily in the scope of the Sanedi mandate, and they felt that those issues also needed to be attended to. They invested a lot of time in attending to those issues, and of course they needed a bit more time. And that's why we are landing today, having committed to a 3 weeks period, much later in the process. About 7 months later, we are coming back to the public to share with you the outcomes of that investigation. So the first thing we have learned here is that is the power of intergovernmental relations. So the dispute mechanisms, as codified in the law, are very powerful. So our view is that the courts are, if you like, a forum of last resort. So we shouldn't be burdening the courts with matters that can be resolved between the parties. Of course, initially we had gone before the courts, that is the various parties. We pulled them out of that court process. We don't think that we should burden the judges on making a determination on issues that are really of a technical nature and can be easily resolved. When I say easily resolved, of course, I don't understand the complexity and the amount of effort that goes into that. But once the numbers are before us, we should be in a position to resolve such matters. So we have invested in that process, and we have an outcome. The second thing we have learned, and Sanedi will say one or two things about some of the key findings, was that City Power in Johannesburg, I mean, as you can imagine, the scale of the exercise was huge. So there is no municipality or city that is bigger than Johannesburg. So if you are able to resolve the challenges with City Power, we should be able to resolve the challenges across the country. And I'm not about to suggest that the challenges will be identical. I'm simply talking about the complexity and the magnitude of what was before us. We don't think that there's any such challenge that can be beyond us anywhere in the country. So we have a template, if you like. So through the Sanedi exercise, through the leadership of the city and Eskom, we've been able to determine a template on how we should be in a position to initiate a process where there's a dispute. So if there's municipality X raising a dispute, now we know how to go about addressing that dispute, especially as it relates to billing. So the point I'm making is that now we are sitting with a template, and it's going to be relatively easy for us to deal with an encounter of a similar nature going into the future. And then the third aspect is what we have learned out of this is that leadership is key. So like I said, the chair of the board here, Ms. Mashava, the executive, or rather the city manager of Johannesburg, matured heads, cool minds, brought themselves into this conversation with the sole intention of resolving it. And also just the team from Eskom in this instance, led by Mr. Mwandevala, were able to come in with cool heads. Of course, you can imagine you want to maximize the returns for your own entity, but you do accept that on the strength and the balance of the evidence before you, there's give and take. I mean, you must relinquish certain positions, you must modify them, you must ensure that you water down some of the expectations without necessarily threatening the very existence of your own institution. So for us, those are the major lessons. So what is the nature of the settlement? So first we were able to confirm that there are issues that have to do with the impact of load shedding. Remember that this period also spent that period where we had an intense load shedding. So when there's an absence of metering, you are doing estimates, and you can imagine you will not be accurate. So I think one of the lessons going into the future, ensure that there's metering, bulk metering, so that when there's load shedding, it must reach zero, because there's no bulk supply of electricity. And we have found that to be a challenge in this instance. And I think City Power was correct to say that, but during periods of load shedding, some of these issues were not accounted for. So those are some of the things that we're able to take account of, and that are some of the wheeling charges in parts of the city. Those parts were not factored into the computation of what was the bill that was given to City Power. But Sanedi will give a much more technical report. So the nature of the settlement is as follows: is that Johannesburg City Power, they will pay the 3.2 billion rand over a period of 4 years. So it's important that there's an appreciation that this is a big ticket of 3.2 billion rand. Of course, that amount has been in dispute, and City Power, I want to emphasize, and City of Johannesburg have done everything possible to maintain paying the current account. Despite all these difficulties, of course, there will be challenges from 1 month to the other, but the issue, the one in dispute, they remained in dispute until we resolve this matter. So 3.2 billion rand paid over a period of 4 years. And then we have also accepted that there are major challenges, and this is it's a nature of the structure of our tariff. So it's not necessarily a Joburg issue. There are major challenges with regards to tariffs during winter. I'm sure you know that there's a time of use, and during winter the tariff is particularly heavy. And of course, households, industries or customers find it very difficult to meet their obligations during winter. So we have accepted that during the winter period, so that we are able to extend that relief not only to City Power but also to the consumers. Of course, the consumers are paying their current account, but we don't want City Power to redirect that to be paying amounts that are in areas. So we have accepted that during the winter periods, there will be relief in relation to the payment of that 3.2 billion rand. So they will be paying it outside the winter period. Remember, I did say is the nature of the configuration of our tariff, so that we are able to provide that relief. And then we've been able to write off that 830 million, and that comes as a result of first, they don't have to pay an interest on what that which is being owed. I've made the point that Eskom has considered with regards to the periods of load shedding, the estimations, and also the penalties that have to do with notifiable maximum demand. So all of those have been removed. As we remove them, they total to 830 million rand. So that 3.2 billion is less than 830 million rand, and that's a concession that the Eskom has made. And of course, the expectation is that we continue City Power to maintain the current account. So I must say that we are excited about this development. As you know, we have something almost similar in Tshwane. As and when municipalities come forward, we'll have these discussions on how best to provide a degree of relief. Of course, I mean, there must be a case that is presented, accepting that Eskom also has got its obligations. They need to collect, they generate electricity, that costs money. They must recover that money from the end user to reinvest it back into their asset base and also into generation of electricity. So I must say, emphasize that there's power in investing in intergovernmental relations, and we have been able to reach this point because of the maturity of leadership. So I really want to thank the Executive Mayor Councillor Dada Morero, as I invite him to also share his insights there. Thanks, Chair.
No, perhaps let me first greet you. Good morning, all of you. Just to express our sincere appreciation, especially for the Minister and his commitment to get us to where we are today. The process that we undertook from November, yes, it had its own challenges, but we want to acknowledge the work that the team had put in place to ensure that at the end we can arrive at a settlement that all of us would be comfortable with. And we think we're at the point where we are happy with the settlement as outlined by the Minister. So both parties, City Power and Eskom, are also happy. So it's a matter of now implementing the agreement as reached. And we also welcome the winter matter that Eskom has also put as part of the settlement, which will actually give some relief to the city during the winter month. So we are happy, nothing much from myself, and to thank the teams for having worked very hard. I know at some point they were almost black on black violence, but eventually they arrived at the settlement. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, no, thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Thank you, Honourable Minister and Executive Mayor. Firstly, I think for placing the trust that you gave to Sanedi to be able to discharge of this responsibility. Yes, it wasn't an easy journey, but I think the scope was clear, I think, from our side to validate the meter reading, the bulk intake points for both the main meters and the check meters, for both Eskom as well as City Power. But also then to be able to take that information, compute it into a bill, so that we're then able to see the discrepancies, and those discrepancies then be able to then take that forward in terms of how they need to be resolved. But also over and above that, just to make sure that I think going forward, all those issues are resolved by identifying some of the root causes, so that we become more preventative, but also we create a template that we can use, I think, throughout the country. So when I received that request, I then obviously, through Dr. Mate, then appointed a team to be able to do that, and therefore I'll allow Dr. Mate just to delve deeper into some of the details, so that we've got an appreciation, I think, of the magnitude of the problems, but also how we meticulously went through the process to make sure that the outcomes are credible, but also it's something that can be used, I think, going forward. So Dr. Mate, I'll just swap the seats quickly.
No, thank you very much, Board Chair, and good morning again, Minister, Executive Mayor, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think Sanedi is very happy that we have reached this stage. We also indeed were very grateful for the trust that was given to us to undertake this task. So as indicated earlier, the process started in November. And I'll talk about the template. The Board Chair and the Minister refers to so that you have an appreciation of what exactly happened. And I think what we've done with City Power and Eskom is equally applicable to other municipalities where there are challenges. So the process started in November. It started by an appointment of a technical lead, Prof. Mutli, who's sitting across the table over there. And then Prof. Mutli assembled a technical team both within Sanedi and also subject matter experts coming from Eskom and coming from City Power. They then embarked on a step-by-step process in terms of gathering the information,
assessing the documents that were readily available. In some cases, some of the information was confidential. So issues of non-disclosure were taken into account. And then the process started. They developed it.
Coming out of Bromfontein, we're currently taking in this settlement between Eskom and City Power. It's been mediated by Sanedi, the South African National Energy Development Institute, and we're listening now to that body's board essentially detailing the process that they had to essentially take on to reach this point. You might remember millions were owed between Eskom and City Power. At some stage, Eskom threatened to even pull the plug on City Power. Now we're told that an agreement has been reached for City Power to pay 3.2 billion rand over 4 years.